Sprint retrospectives are a waste of time, a boring event which is meant to test our ability to stay awake in a meeting. I get these types of comments, feedback concerning the sprint retrospectives very often. And today I will share what I believe is the most important aspect of a sprint retrospective, arguably the only thing that matters, and why 99% of teams get this one thing wrong. Now, let's get something very clear. I believe that there's one thing, a single thing that you need to get right to run an effective sprint retrospective. One thing during the sprint retrospective that you need to do, but also one thing prior and after the sprint retrospective. All these three phases count to run an effective sprint retrospective. Let's start with the Scrum Guide 2020. The purpose of a sprint retrospective is to plan ways to increase quality and effectiveness. The Scrum team inspects how the last sprint went with regards to individuals' interactions, processes, tools, and their definition of done. The Scrum team discusses what went well during the sprint, what problems it encountered, and how these problems were or were not solved. Some keywords here: increase quality, effectiveness, inspect how the sprint went in terms of what went well, what could be improved, so that we can use all these learnings, all this information to improve in future sprints. Keep these in mind, these keywords in mind throughout the video. What's the one thing? The one thing that needs to be present for a team to run an effective sprint retrospective. A sprint retrospective that meets the purpose, the definition of what we just read in the Scrum Guide 2020. This one thing is psychological safety. The team needs to feel that they can freely share their concerns, ask difficult questions, share their failures without the fear of being shamed, punished, or judged. An environment with high psychological safety allows people, teams to focus on innovation, with improvement as a goal, continuous improvement as a goal. Low psychological safety, the focus is on fear, with survival as a goal. When team members stop asking questions, difficult questions, sharing their concerns, what they don't like about the team, about the organization, about our roadmap, where we are going, admitting mistakes, when they stop doing all these things because they live in fear, they stop being agile. The first thing you need to do is get a baseline. How safe is your environment? Ask. You don't assume. Ask questions. Do a survey, anonymous survey. You can use these questions. If you make a mistake on this team, is it often held against you? Members of this team are able to bring up problems and tough issues. People on this team sometimes reject others for being different. Is it safe to take risk in this team? Is it difficult to ask other members of this team for help? No one on this team would deliberately act in a way that undermines my efforts. Working with members of this team, my unique skills and talents are valued and utilized. Now, this can't be done during the sprint. I see many Scrum Masters running a psychological safety test prior to the start of a sprint. How safe do you feel from 1 to 5? What happens if a team is very unsafe, feels unsafe? What do you do? Do you keep going with a retro? Do you stop the retro and fix the issue? Work on the psychological safety? Try to increase it? Obviously not. You can't do that during a sprint retrospective. You need to do it prior to a sprint retrospective. That's why it's the one thing, the most important thing that needs to be here prior to the sprint retrospective. Psychological safety. And to know how to increase it, watch this video right here. Now, what's the one thing that a team needs to do during the sprint retrospective to ensure that they run a great session, an effective session? Let me ask you a question. What's the most important thing in the sprint? What's the purpose of a sprint? Why are we doing the sprint in the first place? To achieve, to complete the sprint goal. Every single sprint, the sprint goal needs to be inspected. What was the sprint goal? Did we achieve the sprint goal? Why did we achieve the sprint goal? What went well? Why didn't we achieve the sprint goal? How can we learn from this failure? What about user stories in the sprint backlog? Did we complete all the user stories that we believed we would complete? What about the target velocity? Did we meet our target? Are we stable? Constant pace in terms of velocity? If not, why? How can we improve? What actions can we take in future sprints to do better, to meet our sprint goal, to meet our target velocity, to complete everything we said we would do. What can we do better? Every single sprint retrospective, these kinds of questions need to be asked because, again, that's the most important thing in the sprint. And while having these discussions, bring all the available information. Burn up chart, burn down chart, velocity, all the metrics, lead time, cycle time, everything you can, all the data that can be used to make decisions, to understand what happened in the sprint. Again, we are inspecting the sprint. What went well in the sprint? What didn't go so well in the sprint? And with a high psychological safety environment, people can freely share their concerns, ask difficult questions, and admit when they made some mistakes. That's okay, that's fine. Failure is totally fine when we have a mindset of improvement because we are continuously experimenting, trying new things. That's how we innovate. That's how we grow. And the number one thing that's the most important during the sprint goal. Did we meet it? Did we create an increment, a shippable increment during the sprint? If not, why? Ask these types of questions and use all the information available to build a plan, a list of actions that you can take in future sprints that will greatly increase your chance that you meet these sprint goals, target velocity, complete all the things that you said you would do in the future sprints. Now, what's the most important thing that you need to do as a team after the sprint retrospective? We just talked about a list of actions that we need to take in order to improve in future sprints. We need to actually perform, do these actions after the sprint retrospective. I can't tell you how many times I've assisted a sprint retrospective. As a member of a sprint retrospective, I gave my ideas. Then after the sprint retrospective, either we have no idea where these items are, not stored anywhere. Everyone forgot about these items. Everyone forgot about what we discussed during the sprint retrospective. Or we have a clear list, but no one cares. These actions were never implemented. And then during the next sprint retrospective, I say the same thing, never implemented. I always have the same issue. Day in, day out, never implemented. This is very common. Talking a lot during a sprint retrospective. Ideas, yeah, we have plenty of ideas, but actions, nothing. The most important thing, the one thing that you need to do after the sprint retrospective is storing these actions first. Clear owners, an approximate target date. Obviously, we haven't done the planning yet, but we can sort of predict how long it will take to do it, at least when we'll start working on that. And then during the sprint planning, talk about these items. Prioritize these items, refine these items, and please pick at least one item, a single item from this list, the retro improvement items list, the priority one item, and move it to the sprint backlog. Do it in the next sprint because continuous improvement is extremely important. And that's it. If you want a full guide on how to facilitate an effective sprint retrospective, watch this video right here and I'll see you in a few seconds.